Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Morning.
Professor. I actually might have to leave in the middle of the session because I might have to take my grandpa to the hospital. He's fine right now, but he said he'll let me know if he needs me to take him, so I might just have to leave in the middle of the session.
Well, it's okay, Amanda. Is your partner coming for the
Yes,
session?
I explained to her as well that I might have to leave.
Okay. So as long as one of you is here, that's no big deal. So take care of your family. It's more important than anything else.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. All right. How are you, Denise?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, you know, hanging on there. a lot of Zooms, just Zoom after Zoom after Zoom. I feel like I'm becoming one of those Zoom, ghosts. Well, what can you do? I'm sure you guys are most of your classes guys on Zoom or Collaborate Ultra in Blackboard.
Most of mine are in Zoom.
Okay, interesting. What about you, Leroy? What are the formats of the classes that you're taking? Diamond says half and half.
Everything is on Zoom. The last time I had Collaborate Ultra too.
Mm,
But
okay.
everyone opted for Zoom this time.
Hmm. So those of you who are experiencing both platforms, which one do you prefer?
I like them both. Zoom is easier.
Hmm. Okay. What about you, Diamond? You're taking both. Oh, okay. Good. Good. All right. Yeah. It's there are certain things that you can do on Zoom better than on Collaborate. Like I like this feature in the participants, the toolbar, where you can quickly do yes, no. I think it works nicely. I don't think it's available on Collaborate because I taught with Collaborate in the spring. And I decided that I would go for Zoom for flexibility. Hi, Nisrian. How are you? Okay, I'm good. No, yeah, I was discussing the Zoom fatigue because in addition to teaching, everything else is held on Zoom, all the meetings, all consultations with graduate students, all meetings with collaborators. I have 4 active collaborations all over the world. I mean, they would have been on Zoom anyway, but at least, there were meetings and workshops, and now it's all Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. It's not that, I guess it's not hectic. It's just, it's very taxing because you really want to sort of be able to chat with people, I guess. Okay, let's start. Enough of chit chat. Right. So I don't have a slide, but this is what we will do today. We will spend, I hope, about 20 minutes, maybe a little bit more than that, on talking about amnesia, because that's what was the original topic for today. And then we will spend the rest of the time looking at your uh, Lab 2 reports. And I asked people who were with me on Tuesday to make sure that your group has at least something I mean, of course, it's nice to have more or less everything. But there's another week before the assignment is due, so perhaps that would be unrealistic. So I asked everybody to make sure that you get at least a couple of paragraphs that we can then all look at. So I hope that you are prepared to share with us your drafts. They're not final yet. So let's start with amnesia. I'll talk about the introduction for about 5 minutes or so, and then I want to share with you an auditory presentation, which is about 12 minutes long on HM, the most famous patient in the history of memory, Henry Molaison. Now, what I don't know is whether I can present simultaneously the slides and the audio files. So what I will try, and if it doesn't work, the slides that you're seeing now are already posted on Blackboard. So if I can't do both simultaneously, then I would suggest that you download the slides. They're posted in weekly schedule for this week. And then you can listen and move through the slides using sort of your own version of it instead of me doing that. But I don't know, it may work. So let's see. Okay, so a very simple definition, as we know, it's the loss of memory abilities. But what's critical is that it has to be beyond the normal course of forgetting, especially when we talk about older people for whom memory problems are very, very prominent. Another critical point is, and we saw that when we talked about Clive Wearing about 3 weeks ago, that intelligence, attention, language are not affected. It's only the memory. So it's a very specialized problem, issue, disease. So to qualify for amnesia, you have to be below the normal benchmarks for memory. Of course, we have tons and tons and tons of neuropsychological assessments that can help us figure out whether the person is just in cognitive decline, especially if it's an older patient, or whether there's something to be worried about. As we know, one of the main components of Alzheimer's is amnesia, amnesia that's progressive. Okay, there are different types, different contents. We will only focus for a few minutes on the two types, but I'm going to show you some of possible causes of amnesia. So again, I'm sending you back to Clive Wearing, whose case we talked about 3 weeks ago. This particular link will take you to YouTube. It's a BBC documentary. It's about 50 minutes long on his entire case, because when it happened to Clive, I think it was 1988, his wife was contacted by the producers, and they managed to catch the early years of Clive just as he was struggling to live with his amnesia. And I told you Deborah Waring, that's her name, also wrote a book about Clive, and it's just one of those very touching personal accounts. And perhaps you remember when we talked about memory errors, and we talked about, that was on Tuesday, we talked about memory as a reconstructive process. That is, we as humans are very into narratives, into storytelling. That's something that is quintessential human. So Deborah's case and the way she presented in the textbook is not terribly scientific in terms of, it's not really, you know, uh, like a textbook. It's just a personal account of what happened between her and Clive. And if you get to read that, you'll see that Deborah was very young when she married Clive, and then about 8 months later, he was struck with encephalitis, and as a result, he became amnesic. So her life was basically, it just started, and there was this husband who was not really there. But the interesting thing is that all these years he doesn't remember anything, but he remembers and recognizes her, which is, I guess, a big human plus, so to speak. And they went through various stages of their lives. They got divorced, and then they remarried again. They renewed their vows and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to say more about Clive Waring just because his case is so well documented. And if you would like to do that as your participation entry into your individual blogs, that's fine with me too. So you can watch this documentary, maybe read more about it. For example, an interesting question would be, where is Clive in 2020? We know that he's alive because it would have been announced. So what's going on with him? Something interesting. You could do a little bit of a scavenger hunt and post a blog like this. But what we will focus on AHM again until 2009 when he died. He was only known as HM, but after his death, his brain was donated to science, and therefore to recognize his incredible uh, contribution to psychology of memory, we now acknowledge his full name, and we continue to present his case 11 years later. Okay, I have to do that this way. We continue to talk about him, right? Of course, these are just probably two most famous cases, but there are many others, which again, I keep advertising this course to you guys. If you're interested in memory, consider taking Psych 385, Psychology of Memory, where you can learn more about it. Okay, so just in general, causes of amnesia. Okay, this is not an exhaustive list, but it's a most common cases. Again, infection, encephalitis, that's Clive, and surgical intervention when hippocampal structures, not just hippocampi themselves, but the tissue surrounding them were removed surgically, that's HM. And then we have other cases. Obviously, Alzheimer's is a very serious and widespread disease in aging populations. That's in developed countries. Stroke, cardiovascular accidents could result in damage in the areas that are responsible for memory, but they're not as horrendous as surgical intervention, because remember from the work of Carl Lashley in the 1950s, memory is distributed across the cortical areas and the limbic system. So it's not like there is one area for memory, with the perhaps exception of the hippocampus, that is affiliated with memory. So that's why the cases of Clive Waring and HM are so important, because they are so sort of focused. Blow to the head, our favorite case in the movies, right? Also could lead to, to amnesia. Come on, open up, right? But it's interesting, again, if you have ever seen Memento, or maybe 50 dates, something like that. If you, I copied it but didn't post it. Okay, good. 50 first dates. Yes, thank you, Amanda. There you go. None of okay. Memento is better of the bunch. 50 First Dates is really completely unrealistic. Finding Nemo, Dora, the fish, who is very amnesic, is actually not a bad uh, representation of amnesia in cartoons. Right. Something that perhaps you guys are not very familiar with is amnesia that's caused by alcoholism. It's known as Korsakoff syndrome. Korsakoff was a Russian psychiatrist slash surgeon who discovered it, obviously, in the country where a lot of men are alcoholics. That causes very severe amnesia as well. So be careful when you drink. Okay, good. So types by duration, that's very simple. You can actually have a temporary amnesia, and that is the case that we know from football players in this country. That's one of the signs of concussion. If the player cannot recall the previous few minutes of the game that preceded, the hit, that's one of the signs that they have suffered concussion. You will have temporary amnesia. And unfortunately, the case of permanent amnesia that can also be progressive. And that's the worst case scenario because there is no medication to bring memories back. You just have to live with that. So temporary amnesia could also be caused by all kinds of other conditions, like if people abuse lithium, which is commonly prescribed for bipolar, which has now a different name, or some antidepressants if they are taken for a relatively long time, like Valium. Of course, this is slightly older drug, could also induce temporary amnesia. But the good thing is that the moment you stop taking this medication, your memory is restored. So there's something good to be said about that. There's also, you'd be surprised that we continue to use ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. It's often used to treat other conditions like epilepsy, but also is surprisingly effective for some people in chronic and severe depressive state. So yes, they suffer temporary amnesia, but the symptoms of depression are alleviated. So it is continued to be used under medical supervision in hospitals. And like I mentioned before, one of the very common cases is head trauma, not necessarily contact sports, but also motorcycle accidents, bike accidents, car accidents that resulted in traumatic brain injury, TBI. But again, the focus of the remaining time in this short lecture today is permanent amnesia. In particular, these are the two main ones, depending on duration of memory impairment, whether it's your previous memories that are impaired, previous to the onset of amnesia, or whether you cannot form new memories. That's anterograde amnesia. So here it's kind of easy to remember which is which because you have these retro versus antero in front of the word grade. So retro, obviously it's about the past. So the direction is from today into the person's past. Antero is like interior, front. This is about formation of new memories. Okay, and HM and Clive Waring are both people with anterograde amnesia. That is, the formation of new memories is impaired, although in Clive, it's both, actually. So, and the main biological substrate for amnesia is most always hippocampus. And in Korsakoff syndrome, it's the thalamus and the surrounding areas. But again, I'm not going to be talking about that today at all. Alzheimer's, as you know, there is a separate biochemical, let's say, mechanism. Again, not something that we will have time to talk about at all today. So here is the just limbic system, the one that's buried under the cortex. So it's inside the brain. And as you can see here on this picture, for HM, it's this seahorse looking like structure called hippocampus that was taken surgically out in 1953. The sort of the structure that's nested within the hippocampus is thalamus. That's the one that is associated with memory loss in Korsakoff's. And for Alzheimer's, it's sort of more distributed than you can show on this diagram. So retrograde, again, prior to the onset of memory disorder, so sort of going into the past. Okay. And going back to our three-stage approach to memory, it is a retrieval disorder. So we assume that the memories are there, memory traces are there, but the person just cannot retrieve them, which is would be characteristic of not remembering the past. What else? Again, this is more of a causes for retrograde amnesia than anterograde amnesia. But again, damage to the hippocampus is very prevalent. It happens in most of amnesia cases. But again, it's the sort of the degree to which it happens. For HM and Clive, it's profound. For other people, it could be, relatively substantial, but not necessarily completely debilitating the way it is. You can imagine that Clive cannot live on his own, nor was HM able to do so. Clive continues to live in a specialized facility, and HM was actually living at various laboratories, including the one at MIT that we will talk about in a minute. And that's why they have to be supervised and live in these facilities, because they don't orient in time and place. So if that person leaves the facility, they'll never find their way back. They just would not be able to do so. So amnesia is not something to take lightly, because it's a really, really debilitating disease. So personal past, obviously. In Clive's case, if you watch that, you'll see that he doesn't remember that he has children. So of course, these are not Deborah's children. These are the children from his previous marriage. He kind of knows that he has children, but he doesn't remember anything about them, which is, of course, very sad. Okay, so now let's move over to anterograde amnesia, and that is, again, what happens after the disease, injury, surgery, whatever. You cannot encode, right, and maintain, store new memories. It's an interesting point. So again, remember, antero into the forward direction, into the future, retro into the past. Okay. And in HM's case, the surgery was in both lobes, so both hippocampi, of which we have two, one in the left hemisphere, one in the right hemisphere, were removed. It is often the case that it's only one hippocampus that's damaged, especially if it is a stroke, which is predominantly the left hemisphere. That's why so many strokes result in aphasia that we'll talk about a couple of weeks from now. That is language impairment, acquired language impairment. So if only one hippocampus is traumatized, then some of the functions can be delegated to the other one, therefore resulting sort of intermittent memory impairment. And it's also known as hippocampal amnesia when the damage is specifically to the hippocampus. And of course, because it's in temporal lobe, it also known as temporal amnesia. And because it is in the sort of medial part of the temporal lobe, you can talk about medial temporal amnesia. That is apparently the purest case of amnesia that is possible, right? That's just the stuff that I already mentioned. So now we will be ready to talk about Henry Molaison, for whom the surgical intervention to treat his epilepsy, which was uh, very severe, resulted in the most famous case of amnesia in the history of mankind. Okay. So what's interesting, you'll see, again, coming back to what we talked about last week, the distinction between implicit and explicit memory, or declarative and one type procedural. What's the cause of epilepsy? Well, why it happens, there are wide variety of opinions, but the actual physiological reason is the electrical, so to speak, electrical storm that originates in a certain area of the brain. It can be different depending on different people. And what happens then, this electrical storm, remember that our uh, nervous system is partially electrical because we have impulses that travel through neurons, right? If there is sort of propagation of that electrical storm through the brain, a person becomes incapacitated, right? Because the entire brain could be affected. Also, because usually this electrical storm originates in one hemisphere, but because we have corpus callosum, the white tracts, that wide kind of, that connects the two hemispheres, the electrical storm can actually also travel to the other hemisphere. And that's the worst case of epilepsy that one can get, because now the entire brain is on fire, so to speak. For others, it is less so. In HM's case, that you will learn about in a few minutes, it was a result of his bike accident when he was 16. So he fell, didn't wear helmet because he was 16 in 1942, because he was born in 1926. So hitting his head, there was no amnesia, but it was epilepsy. And the epilepsy was so severe that he could not study, he could not work. So for him, it was a case of sort of life and death. And at that time in 1953, it wasn't clear what hippocampi were doing. So one of the hypotheses was that hippocampus is responsible for epilepsy. So if you remove that, you will remove the cause of epilepsy. So that was the sort of the logic of how HM was treated then. He was 27. He was 27. So now I'm going to show you this. It's already posted also in the activities for today's week. So what I suggest you do, I mean, the slides are available to you, but you can take a picture of that. It's also posted. So after the 12-minute presentation or 13-minute presentation, you could then answer these questions in your blog for your usual participation points for this week, which will be available to you until Monday, the 26th, as always, 10 p.m. Okay, good. So you don't have to worry about these questions right now, but they may be useful for you to have in front of you as you listen to this auditory presentation. The reason why I would like you to actually listen to it instead of doing it myself, yeah, I could, it's because this is a rare recording that has actual voice of Henry. That is, he was partial. There was an interview of which parts were released to the public. And this NPR presentation on HM, which precedes his death, was so interesting because you can actually hear what he sounded like. And I think that's very fascinating. Okay, so what I'm going to do is try to now start the sound and see if it works, and then go through the slides. Meanwhile, while I'm doing this, please go to Blackboard to today's week. Is it week 8, right? And you will see that the slides, this part, is posted. So download them in case I cannot do simultaneously slides and the sound, which I don't know. I hope it will work. I'll get my computer sound shared, close this, and then start. I'll stop sharing for a minute and start the sound.
50 years ago this month, the Journal of Neurology, Neurosurgery, and Psychiatry published the findings of a remarkable case. A young man who had undergone an experimental brain operation had lost his ability to retain new memories. He could remember things from his life before the operation, but any new face or fact he completely forgot.
Within minutes. Researchers at that time studied him.
It turns out the discoveries opened.
So let me stop for a second. Did you guys hear the sound? Oh, perfect. Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to go back. And did you see the slides as well? Ah, hey, Zoom is with us today. Okay, so let me restart that.
Modern era of memory research. What's involved every time we say, I remember. That young man is now in his 80s, and as Brian Newhouse reports, scientists are still learning from him.
If you close your eyes and just listen for a moment, you may find yourself going somewhere, back in memory, back maybe to a farm or a park or a lake. Other sounds may make those memories sharpen and change.
Add still more, and you may start to see particular faces or even smell wood smoke. Remember? This is the power of memory. The system that captures pictures, smells, sounds, events, directions, endless amounts of information every day, and then seconds or decades later calls it up for us. Memories, what we've learned, what we've done, in a large sense, make us who we are. To appreciate this, think if your ability to form any new memories were suddenly cut off. Who would you be? By studying people who've lost their memories, scientists have learned enormous amounts about how learning and memory work in healthy brains. And what they used to think was relatively straightforward, they've since found is fascinatingly complex, thanks in large part to one man. He's the most famous patient in the study of the human brain today. He's written up in textbooks and dozens of scientific papers. The modern era of memory research essentially began with him. Yet very few people know his name or have ever seen him, despite the efforts of journalists, filmmakers, and TV networks, all of whom have asked to photograph, film, or interview him. Outside the circle of his family and caregivers, he's known only by his initials, H.M. His guardians recently agreed to release audio recordings made of him in the early 1990s, talking to scientists. This is the first time a wide audience has been able to hear his voice.
When you're not at MIT, what do you do during a typical day?
See, that's what I don't remember things.
Uh-huh.
HM was a very pleasant, normal young man, but he had suffered from very severe epilepsy all his life, really. It made him unable to hold down his job as an assembly worker. It made him very late in finishing high school, although he was quite intelligent.
Brenda Milner is a British-born neuroscientist at McGill University in Montreal who first met HM in the mid-1950s.
He had huge major and minor seizures, huge convulsions, and also many, many lapses of consciousness every few minutes. He was in a very, very hopeless condition with his epilepsy.
Dr. Milner came to know HM after Connecticut neurosurgeon William Beecher Scoville performed an experimental operation to help relieve HM's seizures. Dr. Scoville thought if he could remove the part of HM's brain where the seizures originated, it might stop them.
And this operation was carried out when 1953, September, when HM was 27. The operation did have an enormously beneficial effect on the epilepsy, so that HM has maybe now one big seizure a year, and so the clinical hunch about the epilepsy was justified, but obviously at a horrendous price.
Who is the President of the United States now?
That I couldn't tell you. I don't remember exactly at all.
Is it a man or a woman?
I think it's a man.
His initials are GB. Does that help?
No, it doesn't help.
The horrendous price that HM paid was a severe case of amnesia. Not the amnesia of Hollywood, where a person forgets everything about his past, but in HM, it's his ability to acquire new memories, to commit to memory even the simplest events of his day or the world around him, and then to effectively retrieve those memories. Put a finger above your ear. If you were able to push that finger into your head about 2 inches, you'd be in the area called the medial temporal lobe. There's one on each side of the brain. In the 1950s, Dr. Scoville theorized that these were the general areas involved in HM's epilepsy. But in trying to alleviate HM's seizures, Dr. Scoville removed most of the medial temporal lobes, including much of the hippocampus. This unintentional experiment showed that the hippocampus and medial temporal lobes are where the brain converts short-term memory into long-term memory.
Do you know what you did yesterday?
No, I don't.
How about this morning?
I don't even remember that.
Can you tell me what you had for lunch today?
I don't know, to tell you the truth.
HM's condition has also helped scientists understand how and where the brain processes different types of memory. Scientists now know that some brain structures are involved in things like phone numbers we keep only for a few seconds, while others deal with the day's appointments, and still others determine which childhood experiences will stay with us until we die. Now, when you can't remember what you did yesterday or had for lunch today, how do you build a life? Unfortunately, there's been no silver bullet for HM. Holding a job or even having friends, normal things for most of us with working memories, have been beyond him. HM is now in his early 80s and living in a Connecticut nursing home, and he is still what doctors call profoundly amnesic. Dr. Brenda Milner studied and tested HM's memory for years after his surgery. In the early 1960s, she asked Suzanne Corkin, a young American neuroscientist working in her lab, to help. Dr. Corkin, now at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts, has interviewed HM many times since then.
He's in my PhD thesis, and I have followed his progress for the last 43 years. And he still doesn't know who I am.
Despite HM's difficulties with creating new memories, his old ones from his childhood are intact, especially about major world events.
What happened in 1929?
The stock market crashed.
It sure did.
HM's clear memory of events before his surgery showed that although the hippocampus was necessary to make new long-term memories, it wasn't needed to retrieve old ones. In the mid-1950s, the surgeon Dr. Scoville was mortified to discover that his operation had ruined so much of HM's memory, even though it did relieve HM's epilepsy and probably saved his life. Afterward, Dr. Scoville campaigned widely against the procedure, so HM is what scientists call an N of 1. He is the only patient who's had this operation. that makes HM unique in science today. But that's not the only thing, or even the most important. Again, Dr. Corkin.
One thing that still fascinates us today is the fact that in real life, in spite of his profound amnesia, he is able to learn a meager amount of semantic information, knowledge about public figures, people who became famous after his operation. The fact that he can remember anything at all is just enough to make the experimenter fall right off her chair. How about 1963? Someone was assassinated.
He'd been a president,
That's right.
and he was assassinated.
What was his name?
And he had been, like you said, he had been a president.
His initials are JFK.
Kennedy.
That's right. What was his first name?
John.
The other day I was talking to a nurse in his nursing home, just asking her a few questions about him. And after we talked, she went into his room and she said, I was just talking to a friend of yours from Boston, Dr. Corkin. And HM said, Suzanne? Now, this is really astonishing. Now, he doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know what I do or what my connection is with him, but he has learned to associate my first name and my last name. And that was another surprise for all of us.
Somehow the man who couldn't form new memories had found a way to learn new things. It was a remarkable discovery that radically altered our understanding of how learning and memory work. Before HM, doctors believed there was a single memory store through which all information moved and was processed, and that it all resided in one spot in the brain, what you might call a single address. Now, based on what they've learned from HM, doctors understand memory to be much more dynamic than that. They found that the brain has several different memory systems. We use what's called declarative memory anytime we say, I remember, and then recall that we had cereal for breakfast, or that the capital of Illinois is Springfield, or that these two notes on the piano are C and D. The other kind of memory is non-declarative. It's what we use to tie our shoes, ride a bike, or how to play the C scale smoothly without thinking of the individual notes. Again, Dr. Corkin.
We believe that when you remember something, it's really an active process. You're not tuning in to a few cells in your brain where a particular memory is stored. What you're really doing is creating a memory based on information that you have stored in many parts of your brain. Now, since the HM's operation, we know that there are multiple long-term memory systems in the brain that have different addresses. I think his case inspired clinicians and scientists all over the world to find their HM and to make amazing discoveries. So it's a sort of an ongoing adventure of the human mind and the human brain.
Despite those discoveries, scientists admit they still don't know how it all works, how memories are called from different parts of the brain and fused together. What they have learned, though, is that the brain's processes are far more intricate than they ever thought, and much of the credit for that goes to patient HM. Even though HM can't look back over a lifetime of rich memories, his spirit seems untouched by that deficit in his brain.
What do you think you'll do tomorrow?
Whatever's beneficial.
Good answer. Are you happy?
Yes. Well, the way I figure it is what they find out about me helps them to help other people.
For NPR News, this is Brian Newhouse.
Okay, so that is the story of HM. The last slide that you saw was very interesting for science event, which was a dissection of HM's brain after his death. Interestingly, it was in 2009. This event, which took many hours, more than 4 hours, was live stream on the internet, and lots of people watched it. It's not that kind of interesting, and it's a special machine that does these extremely thin nano slices of the brain. So now there's a whole collection of HM's brain available to scientists, where you can, it's a sagittal sagittal slices, where you could see the actual damage to HM's brain. So I encourage you to do activity 8.5 for this week, and answer the questions on HM. Okay, it's 10:51. Let's take a 5-minute break while I'm getting your Google Docs ready. So if it is the same Google Doc that you've used before, not a problem. I will be able to open it. If it's a new one, you have to send me an invitation. And let's say we will reconvene at 10:57. And at this point, I will ask you to volunteer to share a particular paragraph. So obviously we have, an introduction that has at least 3 paragraphs and so on. Okay, so open up your Google Docs, get ready. If it's a new one, like I said, send me a link. Otherwise, we will reconvene in 5 minutes at 10:57.
Do you think it's possible that his epilepsy was fixed based on the fact that he possibly didn't remember he had seizures?
Well, but remember, his epilepsy started 9 years before the surgery.
And he had memories of everything before.
Yeah, he had memories all the way through the time of the surgery. I mean, he remembered his family. Obviously, they all were dead at the time when this interview was recorded. You saw the floor plan of the house. He could still draw it. So there are many things that were with him. And once they managed to do an fMRI of HM's brain, they saw, which was one of the most important discoveries, was that it's not just the hippocampi that were removed. And if you ever read the book about HM, there are some gory details of the surgery. Even I didn't believe that until I researched it a little bit. So apparently so what they did, now remember that the brain doesn't feel pain. So they only did anesthesia while they were actually drilling through his skull. And then Scoville, who was the main surgeon, there was of course a team of people, it was performed in a surgical theater. So there were students and other surgeons present. He inserted this metal straw, like, the metal straws that we're using today in an effort to get rid of plastic straws. And he sucked out bits of hippocampi, not, removed them with a scalpel or anything, but through that straw. And I was like, oh. And obviously it wasn't very precise because there was no fMRI available. So in the process of doing that, Scoville removed a bunch of other tissues around hippocampi. And as people continue to study HM, they suggested that his profound amnesia was a very special case because it wasn't just the hippocampus, but also ethnorenal hippocampi structures. I'm not going to bother you with all the terms, but a lot of tissue surrounding hippocampi. And that's what perhaps, killed it. The fact that they thought that his seizures originated in the hippocampus apparently worked because, as you heard in the interview, he only would get maybe one seizure a year as opposed to having multiple a day, making him a complete invalid, right? So interesting. Okay, but let's get going with in another minute with our Google Docs. So I'm trying to open my Google Drive. Okay. All right. Okay, I see Karen and Raphael's work. Who else has a Google Doc for me to open? Where's my list? Just now? Okay, is it the same one, Rebecca, or is it a new one? I just sent you ours. Same one. No, it's not. It's a new one. Okay, so again, for you guys, if it's a new one, in the beginning of the break. So let me check my email so that I can respond to your invitations. Okay, I see Rebecca's. All right. Good. So Rebecca and Jeffrey. Okay. Right. Okay, we do same one. So Denise, who's your partner?
Julia.
Julia. Okay, good. Let me find. The problem is that I have Google Docs from the other class. So I have to scroll, see what I can find. Okay. Okay, I see you. All right. Julia and Denise. Good. Right. All right. I don't have the group numbers, so let me see. Karen and Raphael, are you group number 1 by any chance?
Yes.
Good. So Julie and Denise is group number 2. Rebecca and Jeffrey, what is the group number for you guys? Okay, of course I can open my 4. Why don't you, can you please change the name with 4 in the front, like group 4, because it makes it easier for me to move from document to document. I know who is who. Okay, let me open. Okay, done. Thank you. Let me open the group numbers so I can. Not that I don't know your names, it's just easier for me. Okay. So group number 5 is who? We don't have group number 5. Okay, Brandon and Bishoy. Do you guys have a Google Doc for me to open? You are group number 6. Diamond and Irani, you are group number 7. You guys have a document for me?
No.
No, you don't? You don't have a draft for us to discuss?
No. I haven't been in contact with her in a while.
Okay. All right. Group number 8, Noor and Melissa. Do you have a document for us to look at? And group number 9, Leroy and Ari. Group number 10 is Nick, Justin, and Isaac. And group number 11 is Parker and Umber. I've tried getting, but he hasn't replied. Okay. Do you have anything, Umber? Oh, intro is fine. Let's open it. Did you do it in Google Docs? It's the same one I see. Okay, Leroy says the same one. Okay, let me go back to, let's see, Leroy and Ariel. Let's see if it is number 9. Perfect. Good. So, Amanda and Nisreen are using the same one, so I'm gonna open that. Right now I'm getting 11. Okay. Okay, I see. 1 second. I'm still opening everybody's stuff. Okay. Okay, that's number 3. I'm just rearranging tabs so I can. Karen and Raphael, can you change your name to group 1 again so I can? Thank you. Should I send you? No, Diamond, if you don't have anything for us to discuss. Okay, so let me just do it again. I have 1, I have 2, I have 3, so 6. Brendan and Bishoy, are you with us? Okay, Diamond is still working. Okay, Bishoy, do you have a draft for us to look at?
Yes, Professor, I'm going to share it with you.
Okay, good. Okay, that's group number. Okay, Melissa says that's the same one. So let me find Melissa. Melissa and Noor. Okay. So it's the old one that I see, Melissa. It's the one on Stroop.
You have to scroll all the way down.
Oh, can you move it all the way up, please? Because it takes time for me to. So take the new stuff and put it at the top, and that's for everybody. If anybody else has the same problem, always put the new stuff at the top so that I can at least save some time because I don't have to scroll. Okay, Nick, do you guys have your draft with us?
Yeah, we shared it with you.
Okay, is it a new document or the same one?
It's a different one.
It's a different one. Okay.
It's just titled Group 10.
Let's see. Okay. Okay, I see it's an invitation from Justin. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Can you please change the name, Nick? So it. Oh, okay. Let's see. Is that? Keywords. Good. Yep, I got it. And that says group 10. Perfect. You good? All right. So let me again. So we don't have fun. So I haven't heard from Bishoy. Where did you send me an invitation, or is it the same file?
No, Professor, I'm looking for it right now. I'm searching for it. As soon as I find it, I'm gonna share it with you.
Okay, good. So I don't have 6, 7 is diamond, 8, 9, 10, 11. Perfect. Okay, so now remember we have, I hope that at least you could get through introduction, method, and results. Discussion is something that might take more time. So let's start with the title page quickly. Who is willing to share? That is, you tell me and I will share. Who is willing to share with us the title page? Okay, Leroy says, sure. Group 9. Okay, let me see. Okay, because I have multiple tabs open. I don't know what Zoom will do, but let me try. And if it doesn't work, then what I will do, I'll make the group that is showing us the stuff a co-host so you can share. Okay, let me make it. Can you guys see? Yes, perfect. All right, can we make it larger? View, where's view in Google? View, there it is. Oh, okay, good. There's 100%, so I can make it, let's say 150. How's that? Better. There's the zoom. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's look quickly. We have the title. In the header, we have the page number. Now remember, the page number, this is not something that I don't, worry too much, but it should be also Times Roman. Leroy, this is Arial. The title. Now remember, the title has to have the two variables, right? The independent variable that affects a dependent variable, and it has to have a verb. That's what's missing here, right? Because this title, NMC effects on memory recall, is not telling us what the effect is. So you would need to change that to make sure that your independent variable does something to your dependent variable, and it does something. That's what's missing here. Nice that both the authors have a blank line and another blank line. That's the way it should be. Department of Psychology, College of Staten Island, City University of New York, blah, blah, blah. Everything is perfect. Maybe instead of having a colon, just have it like this. So one thing that's missing here is the verb. That allows you to make a statement, to make an argument. So everybody should quickly check the title page against this. Remember, the title itself cannot be plagiarized from Leroy and Ari. It has to be yours. Everything else can be plagiarized because that's the way it should look like. Perfect. All right. Who is willing? Is only the title bolded? Yep. Nothing else. Absolutely. Only the title. Note that all the content words are capitalized. That's what APA 7 requires us to do. Perfect. Okay, who is willing to share with us the first paragraph of the introduction? Nisreen, perfect. So let me stop. Nisreen, remind me your group number 3. Okay, I see that. So let me see if I can switch and whether you will see it. Do you see Nisreen's? Yes, we can. Gods of Zoom. Thank you. Okay. All right. So a little thing, right? Yes, you can keep my PhD if you want, but my title should go in front of my name. Okay. Otherwise, it looks perfect, and the title is under construction. Good. And we have the page number. Again, make sure that's Times Roman, not Arial. Okay, good. Abstract, we're going to skip that. All right, quickly, everybody. So the title will go here. We don't have it yet. Let's look at the first level, the heading of level 1, the word introduction. How does it need to be modified to meet the APA requirements. Can you zoom in? Okay, let's zoom to 150. Centered, yes, Amir, thank you. So the word introduction is level 1, so it has to be centered. Perfect. Now we are ready to actually, so remember, we'll try to do both. We'll try to look at APA requirements and content simultaneously. Again, I warn you, be very careful because I read everything. If I see that you plagiarize, I will fail you. So don't do that. So thank you to Nisrian and who is Nisrian's partner? Amanda, thank you guys for sharing with us. And we promise, right, everybody, that we will not plagiarize your text. Okay, so remember we have something called notes. Okay, that's fine. We're looking at one paragraph only, Amanda, so you're okay. We are looking at something as I referred to several times before, the square paragraph rule, okay? The square paragraph rule says that our paragraphs are the main units of meaning in our text. And it has to be no more than 6 to 8 sentences. And it should be constructed with 3 components in mind: transition, key sentence, and evidence. Usually, I told you before, the key sentence is sentence number 2 in psychology. So let's all of us read this paragraph silently for a minute and then come back to the questions of, does this paragraph give us the required structure? Okay, good. So who is willing to talk to us through this paragraph? It doesn't have to be, actually, I don't want it to be Amanda and Nisri, and I would like it to be somebody else. So if you were reading this, what are your impressions of this text? 12 sentences, Leroy says. Okay, yeah, because some of these sentences could be like the first 2 could be combined, right? So technically, although it is 12, it's not necessarily going overboard in terms of number of sentences. What happens to the 3 components that I just named? Transition, key sentence, and evidence. So the most important sentence in any paragraph is the key sentence. What is the key sentence here? That's the one that holds the entire paragraph together. You can delete all the other sentences. As long as the key sentence is there, the text will be glued. There will be logic. So what is the key sentence here? First, memory is a key faculty in life, as it is information that we gather on daily and over the time of life. That's a little awkward at the end. Not really, right? Because we want this paragraph to be accessible to laymen, to people who are not psychologists. So in that sense, this paragraph is doing that. The other second memory is in use in many areas of life, as memory is used for remembering tasks, recalling information for tests. No, again, this is like, background. So there is memory and it is important. We need a sentence that will lead us to the second paragraph, right? That sort of introduces the topic. So if you look at the first, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. Actually more than that, right? It looks like almost that the first part of the introduction is sort of all about memory in general, right? It's fine. You could improve in terms of connecting sentences better, but that's not that important. Now look at the second half of the paragraph, right? What happens here? Here is one little thing that you need to be aware of. We don't introduce the study in the first paragraph. We can talk about what the topic is, but we're not saying that this is what we're going to do in this paper. So we need a better, it looks like almost like, let me show you what I would notice that, and I would say, another requirement for a paragraph is to have only one point. Okay, that's how we think. So if we has 2 points, it's 2 paragraphs. So actually one could say that these are 2 different paragraphs. And that's not a bad idea. You can have 4, you can have 5. I'm asking you to write the minimum, but I'm not asking you to write just the minimum. You can write more. So here, now, okay, we don't have, no, we don't. The problem is that unless you are familiar with the actual principles of scientific writing, you may be lost. You may be saying, I have no idea what I need to do. And I'm saying that as minimum, you have to have 3, but you can have more. Absolutely. So I would say that now the first paragraph is sort of a paragraph about memory in general. Makes sense. Again, it needs a little bit of tweaking and some stylistic improvement, but it's a good one. Now we have a second paragraph, right? And here it's much easier to come up with the idea of 3 components because there is a transition here. Who can tell me what the transition is now in that second paragraph? Remember, a transition doesn't have to be since. Yes, Julia. Yes, the word since. It's actually not a very good word here because since is usually used in a temporal sense, but a lot of people are now using it as a causal. So now we have the transition. We talked about memory. Now we say memory is very important. And I like this connection, right? It brings up a question, what's easiest to remember? Okay. I think it's a beautiful sentence. Yes, because would be better, Amanda, but we stylistically, we know that we are not supposed to start sentences with because. So the easiest way would be to rearrange the sentence a little bit in such a way that you don't have since as the first word, and then you can replace it with something. So it's a great sentence. It just needs a little bit of perhaps syntactic change. Now, for the study done in this paper, that has to go because you're not allowed to talk about the paper here. So this paragraph should be about what? Come on, guys, we only have that little time, although could be, yeah. So what is the key general knowledge? General knowledge is the first paragraph. What about the second paragraph? What's the concept that will give us the key sentence? It's here, it's in the text. Animacy, yes. But remember, animacy is a technical term. So it's a little strange to start jumping right into animacy. You would want to say something more generic. What would be more generic? Okay, variables are a is a technical design term, not here. So purpose, right? What's animacy? Animacy is about living things, right? Remember the article by Nairn and colleagues is about evolutionary value of memory. So why do we care about living things? So the problem here is saying animate, inanimate words, because that's already the materials of the experiment, and it's too early. So the concept of, living things, that's what we want. And living things are important. Why? Yes. So without technical terms yet, they will have to be introduced here, but at the end of the paragraph. Or maybe already in the next one, which will be about Nairn. So it is about living things being important to memory. So why are living things important to us as humans? Survival, yes, right? If you pay attention to things that are living things that move, you're more likely to, propagate your genes into the future. It's a little funny, but there is a way to try to talk about living things before you introduce animacy. And then at the end of the paragraph, you will say that living things in language, right? In any language, in English as well, are usually coded by animate versus inanimate words. So now we can say at the end that we are using animate and inanimate words. And what do we desperately need here as well? Yes, we can talk about survival and living things in this paragraph. Beautiful. And then say that living things are represented by animacy. But my question still stands. What is it that your brain, your mind clamors when you read this? If you are a non-psychologist, let's say, a non-linguist. Come on, guys, it's examples, right? We want examples. If you say, oh, living things are coded by animacy and animacy, give us some examples, right? So what would be a good example of an animate word? Yes, or concepts. Owl, beautiful. What would be a dog? Right. What would be, it's actually very nice to use the same words that you will be discussing later. So owl is better than dog because the dog was not a part of the list. And what would be an example of inanimate word? Again, from the article. Lamp. Yeah. Was it lamp? No, I think lamp was in our lists. What was a good inanimate word from the Nairn's article? Okay, whatever it is. Purse. Yes, Isaac, perfect. And the last the last sentence is a waste because it's already our paper. We cannot mention our paper until we get to the very last paragraph. Stove. Good. Of the introduction. Beautiful. Okay. Who is willing to share with us the paragraph about the article itself? Nairn and colleagues. We can do it again. Before we do that, Leroy, thank you. Let me ask other people. Who hasn't? Okay. Notes. Okay. So Julia and who's your partner? And Denise, can I show your paragraph? Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. So let me make it bigger again. 150. Can you guys see it? Because I switched to a different tab. Beautiful. All right. Okay. Notes to self. We will Good says, not yours. Good job, guys. Okay, so here is the problem to begin with. Let's start with that. Now, of course, a transition is missing here, right? That needs to connect this paragraph to the first one. Now I'm asking you to tell me what's wrong here. Third of the intro. Which third of intro, Noor, are you referring to? Third paragraph? Third part of a paragraph? What? Yes, thank you, Amanda. The problem here is that Nairn is not the only author of that paper. So it cannot be Nairn because then you ignore the other 4 people. So it has to be Nairn et al. And in the old days, like you, with APA 6, we were required to name all of them. But now the new APA 7 rule is, thank you, Leroy, is exactly et al. From get-go. So that's it. So now we are saying, let's, I'm not going to do that. You guys now, let's read this paragraph first and then be ready to discuss it.
Professor, do we lose points for adding the names?
Yes, you do, because it's not APA.
All right.
So what we don't want whatever his first name is, James Nairn. We don't want in the article entitled Evolutionary Value of Memory. All of this will cause you points. This is it. There is only 2 ways of, this is known as the in-text citation. All right. In-text citation. Okay. There's only 2 of them. One is the way it is represented in the sentence. When we use the author's names as the subject, the agent of the sentence. The other one is here at the end of the sentence in parentheses. That's it. There's nothing else. When you see this kind of in the article, that's the textbook language. That's not the APA language. And you are psychologists in training. You are required to be fluent in the APA style. Okay, so let's read. Okay. Ugh. Ouch. Okay. All right, so let me do a little bit of cleaning first and then we'll discuss the actual content. All right, so one, it's an awkward way of doing it the way it is. We will start with saying like this. Okay, so Nairn et al. Tested. Now look that here, remember I said we need a transition, right? So if we ended the previous paragraph, which is not in this paper, but in the other one, saying animate and inanimate words, then we can't switch to objects, right? Because we need to have a connection between the 2 paragraphs. And now there is something called the groups of items. What's that? Is it the same as words? And we don't really care. Remember, I told you to ignore experiment 1. I mean, look at it, but you don't need to mention it at all. So that part comes from experiment 1. Can I cross them out? No. I would delete that completely. Okay. And again, the groups of items. I mean, you have to be very, remember, psychology, especially cognitive psychology, is a science. It's like algebra or chemistry. The words and terms are very, very precise. So if we started calling them animate and inanimate words, we will say, and we don't even need that sentence at all, right? Because it is experiment 1. We don't care. So all of this from here to here should be gone. But then the next sentence, right? So the the summary of the research article has to be like an abstract. It has to have a research question. And here we have that, the idea of animacy, right? And we could make it even stronger, right? We could say that animacy results in, right? So that would be the hypothesis. Then comes the method. So we have 54 college students. They ask to study 24 words. What's missing here after 24 words? What should we add here? Look, it's here, right? Half of the words were names of, you can just say animate words, and half were inanimate words, and we already have them. No, well, levels, yeah, but we can either use the technical terminology, levels, conditions, or we can do it the way Denise and her partner did that, by saying that half of the words, that is 12, were animate and half were inanimate, right? They were shown for 5 seconds each, and the word subjects is not used anymore in APA 7. It's reserved for animals in research. How do we call people who participate in our studies these days? Participants. Yes, Leroy. Beautiful. Okay, so this is a good sentence. 5 seconds is not unnecessary detail, but what we want to know is that it was free recall, right? So after the list, this sentence seems to be redundant with this one, right? So we could delete one part of that. The participants repeated the process 2 more times, so the researchers could examine the effects of blah. It's fine. Okay, good. So here is the hypothesis, right? Yes, exactly. Free recall means recall the words. And of course, these are the words that we just saw. So this is a very nice sentence, right? The results supported. The researcher accepted these guys are, right? There is 5 of them, that animate objects, in this case words, were remembered. We would say significantly better, right, than inanimate. And these guys are gone, right? We never use them. They are from experiment 1. We don't care. Now, what happens next is something that you shouldn't do in the introduction. We don't need the technical details of statistics. That's the textbook citation? Is it? No, I think it's from, or is it? Was it? Oh yeah, I see, except it's, do you guys remember the names of our authors? I thought it was experiment 1 because it's not the authors of our book. Can you guys see the names? McBride and Cooper Cutting. And what are they called here? Cuttings and McBridge. No, the order is wrong, Julia. What's the order, Julia? No. What's the order, Julia? Let's do it correctly. But we don't need to cite the textbook. We don't. No, you never change within the orders, the order within the textbook or the article. Because the first author is the one who gets all the, well, not all, but most of the credit. So when you do that, you're putting Cooper cutting ahead of McBride, and that's wrong because she's the one who was the first author. If you do it to my article, I will be very pissed because I'm cited as C. Karen et al., right? And if you put me as a second author, I'm not going to be cited. I don't want that. Not that I care because I'm a full professor, but in general. So never, ever change this. That's the way they decided to present themselves to the world. And also, it's a very bad impression when you misspell people's names. It's not Cuttings, and it's not Cutting, it's Cooper Cutting. So it's McBride and Cooper Cutting. And that's why I did not recognize them. So get rid of this because that will be an issue. So instead of giving this entire incredibly complex results, we have to put them in words. You already have one, okay? You saying that animate words remembered actually we should use past tense, were remembered significantly better than inanimate words. And what's the second finding? That has to do with the fact that the process was repeated 3 times. What happens when the same words are given to you for the second time and then for the third time? What happens to your recall? Improves. Good. Gets better. Yes. So in addition to this sentence, right? Now, because I deleted all that statistical gibberish, which we don't need here. We need the means. So here is that the results supported that the researchers' hypothesis that inanimate words were remembered significantly better than inanimate words. So here we will say mean animate. I'm just going to abbreviate, and that should be sub because it's not word but pages. It's not going to look fine, but you understand me when I'm saying it should be subscript. So who can quickly look up, who has the paper in front of you, who can look at the figure, the left 2 bars in the figure in the Nairn et al.'s article? What was the mean percentage of recall of animate words? Okay, so Leroy says 75. It should not be italics anymore. Versus mean in inanimate. Okay, 65. Okay, so what's the difference here? %75 versus 65%. So what's the effect of animacy? What's the size of the effect? Okay, 65 to 55, no problem. My question still stands. What's the size of the effect? That's not, I'm not using it in the technical term of the effect size. I'm just using it descriptively. How much better are animate words recalled compared to inanimate words? What's the difference? Anybody? 10. Yes. So 10% is an important effect because we're saying here it was significantly better. That means statistically significant. So we don't need any of statements. We don't need anything else. Now we need the same for so this is animacy effect. That's independent variable 1. When we have, these are called trials in the article. Was there an effect of trials? That is, out of 3 trials, 1, 2, 3, which one produced the best recall? Which one produced the worst recall? Which one produced recall in the middle, regardless of whether they were animate or inanimate? Just if you take all words and average across them. So this sentence is not about animacy anymore. This sentence is about trials. Okay, T1 versus T2 versus T3. Okay, good. And then this is basically the end of the paragraph, but one could add one more sentence, like conclusion, if you want to, which will be a transition to the final paragraph. Okay, who can share with us the last paragraph? It's very useful to go through your text in case you haven't noticed yet. Who has the third paragraph? Well, the last one written for us to look at. I do. Okay, Nick, group 10, right? That's good, good, good. Okay, so let me make it larger. Why share this file? Why can't I? Hold on a second. For whatever reason, I can make it larger. Oh, it's not in Google Docs. It's all right. So what I will do, Nick, I'm just gonna take this paragraph and put it in Word and open it in Word. Okay, give me a sec, guys. Where is my Word? Paste. Oh, didn't do it. All right. What do we want to do? Why doesn't let me? Options to download, print, and copy have been disabled on this file. Okay, so Nick, Isaac, who would like to be made a co-host so you can share? Stays to sign in. I think I signed in, but no. I can make one of you a co-host so you can share your screen with us. So who should I do, Isaac or Nick?
You can do me.
Okay, Nick. All right, so I'll make you into a co-host, which means you will be able to share the screen with us. Okay, let me find Nick. There you go, Nick. Make co-host. Yep. Okay, Nick, at the bottom of the screen, you have the blue button says share screen. So click on that. And scroll down to that paragraph. Perfect. Excellent. Can you guys see? Do we want to ask Nick to make it a little larger? A little larger. Okay, Nick, so make it go to 100% on the left in the toolbar and make it 150.
Hold on, this is really confusing. What do I have to do?
Okay. Do you see the toolbar, right? See, it says 100% on the left.
Yeah.
Yes, make it 150. Okay, good. So now you'll have to scroll to give us a chance to read.
All right. But you see when I scroll, like you see me do this?
Yep.
Okay, so okay.
I do.
Hold on. Okay. We'll start here.
Yeah, we'll start here and then we'll ask you to scroll down. Okay, I think you can scroll to the next page. Stop.
This is paragraph 3. This is where it starts.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so scroll to the next page, page 5. Right. Okay, let's fix some technical issues, right? Note that wherever you talk about Nairn, there's only one place where you're doing it right. At the top of page 5, that's fine. But then you keep saying he, and then at the third line from the bottom, you're saying Nairn. But remember, it's 5 people.
So would I put like they?
Yes, it's 5 people. The same about you and Isaac and Justin. There's 3 of you, so you don't ever use I. You always say we, because it's 3 of you. However, the problem is, so that's a technical problem. The problem is you have too much of Nairn in this paragraph, and Nairn shouldn't even be here. It is all about us. So go back to the beginning of the sentence, beginning of the paragraph. Guys, let's read the first sentence and see if it makes sense. Though being an icon in the modern discoveries of memory, the current study was refined to challenge the brain further than before. Does this sentence even make any sense? No, it's not about HM. Not at all. Right? Why is the word icon here? Icon, remember, is from the studies of sensory memory. It's not even this. Why is it about brain? There's nothing about brain in that study. It's about evolutionary value of memory, but we don't even care. What we need here is something that will be very directly connected to what we will do next, right? The major difference in the experiments is the activities implemented between seeing the words and being asked to recall them. There is no difference. Our experiment in the exact replication of Nairn et al. That's how I wrote the script. Yeah, the distracted task is a little different, but we don't care about that. So what we need here are sentences that will give us our research hypothesis. Do we expect to see the same results as Nairn et al.? Or do we expect different results?
The same.
The same. So that's what we need to say. It's not about brain. It's not about discoveries. This first sentence, Nick, is very vague and abstract and has nothing to do with what we did. So this paragraph is, what is the goal of our study? We had exactly the same manipulation, except the distracted task is a little different. So we expect to see which effect, Nick?
The animacy.
Right. And we also, if you're going into this direction, we will expect to see the results of the effects of the trial, right? The more you repeat the words, the more likely you will remember them, regardless of whether they're animate or inanimate. So these are the 2 predictions. You are predicting that animate words will be recalled better, and that the more you see the words, the better you will recall them. That's what you want to say here. So we are replicating Nairn et al. Like I said, there's that little difference in terms of the distracted task, but that's not going to affect our results, right? So a lot of the stuff that you have here, anything has to do with nairns should go. Shouldn't even be here, right? So this, to enhance the difficulty of this, the current difficulty of this, okay, well, the current study had participants complete a causal arithmetic problem. Yeah, but it was very, very simple, right? 7 minus 2 doesn't cause anybody to slow down. But you're spending too much time on something that's not that important. Make sure you have the two predictions. Okay, great. Thank you, Nick.
No problem.
All right, you can stop sharing with us. All right, we don't need the first paragraph of method because it's easy. Let's do design and materials. Who has a draft of design and materials that you could share with us? That's a very important paragraph because that's where you'll describe our study. So now from this point on, method and results, you cannot ever mention nairn at all. The only other place where you can talk about the article is in the discussion. So participants as an easy paragraph. I already told you that we have 20 participants, equally split between men and women. So we have 10 women and 10 men. And age, ethnicity, and all of that stays the same. And incentive to participate in the study also is the same. So we're not spending time. But design and materials is an extremely important paragraph. Does anybody have it written? Yes, no, yes, no. Okay. So then I'm going to, Raphael and I do. Would you be willing to? Yes, it's in the method. Karen, can I? Yes, it is a draft. If it were a fully written paper, why are we spending time? Of course, it's a draft. So do you mind if I share it with the group? Karen, is it okay? Good. Okay, so let's now look at where is it? Show all windows. Okay, good. That's this. You guys, group 1. Let's make it 150. Okay, let's quickly look at the APA. So heading level 1 is method, perfect. Heading level 2, participants, bold on the left. And here's design and materials. Okay, can you guys see that? Good. Okay. So our first sentence should be the sentence that describes the task. What did you have to, the participants? So remember, a little bit of a confusion here is that you are both the participants and the authors. So when you write the paper, you ignore the fact that you were the participants. You talk about the participants as if they were other people, not you. Design and materials, yes, one section. So our first sentence has to be about the task. What is it that the participants had to do? See, you saying we, right? Remember, we're not doing that. We are talking about these participants as if they are somebody else. And you're already giving us the variables, and that's a little early. So instead, right, we will say we could say in this experiment, right, or in the experiment, the participants. I can't type today. Were. So this is the task. We're describing the task. Then, so here's a little bit of a problem, Karen. And the problem here is that some of that is the procedure details. So that stuff shouldn't be here. Here we're doing the conceptual design. So we need next our independent variables and the levels with examples. And what was measured? That is the dependent variable and the units. Okay. This stuff, for example, we were given, again, it's not we, it's the participants, right? Between blah, blah, blah. And that is the information that we need. Can somebody tell us what was the interstimulus interval? That is, what was the time between each word? So you're seeing purse, then there is interstimulus interval, then you're seeing owl, then you're seeing another the same one. So what was the?
Was it 5 seconds?
No, it was 2.5.
Oh, 2.5, okay.
Yes, okay. And what was the duration of each word on the screen? How many seconds were you given to memorize the word, each word? That's the same one as in the Nairn et al. Article. But this sentence belongs to the procedure. It's not here. So when you're describing the task, right, then you will have this simple math questions. Why? Right? So the best way to describe that would be to say the learning phase was blah, blah, blah. During the retention interval, there was whatever, followed by the testing. So the learning phase, right? The testing phase, right? Okay, if you do it this way, then your task, and you don't need to give the details. You're just saying in the learning phase, we did this. The participants did this. During the retention interval, they did that. And in the testing phase, they were asked to type in or recall. We don't even need the technical terms in terms of procedure. So it is important to distinguish design details from the procedure details. And the materials, of course, are these 12 and 12 words for a total of 24. Okay? Okay. Good. Okay, this stuff, the buffer words, right? Buffer words that preclude us from experiencing primacy and recency. Again, it's the procedure. The fact that there were buffer words does not affect the results. See, whatever is not critical for the design should be relegated into procedure. And the fact that dependent and independent variables are here is too late. All of that has to be right after the task. Okay, and we also need a final sentence, which actually will be in its own separate paragraph where we violate the square paragraph rule because we just don't have enough stuff. We will say that the data were analyzed and whatever the statistical test you used. Okay, let me, because we are running out of time. Remember, you can do one of two things. Let me stop sharing this and go to Blackboard. Where are we? Here we go. This is the Blackboard. We go to finding 5. I know it's a little small, but you don't need to see the details. You just need to get the gist. So if we go to experiment 2 on finding 5, you will see 3 files here. The first one is the research article by Nairn et al. The second one is our class data. So this is the one that you must use to analyze your data. And I'm not making it a secret anymore. It's the test that you have to do is paired samples t-test. Okay, that's the required one. Paired samples t-test is so well described everywhere. You can just Google it, or you can go to JASP. Let me share JASP with you for a second. Okay, right, this is JASP. Can you guys see it? Good. Thank you, Amanda. And again, there is a 5-minute tutorial. That's all you need because it's very, very simple. You're going to open your file. I'm just going to open the recent file because I already have it. Oh, that's a different, but doesn't matter. Okay, so this is the data from Stroop effect. There is the button called t-tests. So what you have to do is click on that. Forget about Bayesian. If I have a newer version of JASP, if you downloaded it before, you may not even have that. Just use classical always and paired samples t-test, right? And now what you have to do, you have to select the 2 variables whose mean you will compare. Okay, and here's your t-test. And if you want to make sure that it all looks good, you can also do all kinds of other things. You can do descriptives. All right, so again, remember this is animacy, Stroop. So these are the means, these are the standard deviations. That's the stuff that will go into the text. And if you want to see how beautiful that looks, you can create a plot. That's not quite APA style, but you know, better to create a figure in Excel. Again, there's tons of tutorials, again, on YouTube, how to create a nice looking Excel figure, which in your case will only have 2 if you're doing the required stuff. And the last thing for me to show you, and that will be the end of our today's class, is for those of you who want 5 extra points, you can do the second file. It's the data for extra credit analysis. That is, if you know how to do it, if you have time to approach psychology tutors that are available to you online, or if you are taking 266 or whatever, you can do a full analysis, which was represented in the 3rd paragraph that we saw. Denise and Julia, right? Put in the entire F statement stuff. But again, this is not required. If only if you want to, if you're familiar with it, if you would like to do it. What's required is a paired samples t-test. And that's the last thing. The t-test looks like this. I don't know, I'm just saying whatever. That's the T statement. So you don't spell it out by saying, and the degrees of freedom were. You actually are writing them like this. Again, go to the Google or APA manual if you have it, and then you just have to describe it in words. Okay, this is it. I hope it was helpful. The class is over, and I'll see you guys, those of you who will come on Tuesday. We'll do imagery. That's fun. Otherwise, I'll see you on Thursday when this assignment is due.
Professor, are you gonna eventually? Well, I was really wondering about the discussion. We didn't do that, right?
We didn't do that. No. But we can't do discussion unless you have a draft. Somebody has a draft, we can discuss it. We can do it on Tuesday if you come with that.
But are you able to just give me like for implications? Well,
the implications, Isaac, have to do with what could you do with this stuff later on. I mean, I can give you one idea, then many ideas. I mean, do you think that if we were to test children, that we will see the animacy effect as well in children?
Isn't that just further research on it?
Yeah,
but that was a different question, no?
No, it can. I will change the rubric in such a way that this last piece of discussion, implications, limitations, and future directions, can actually be one paragraph. So I'll change that because you don't have to write 4 paragraphs. That's too much. So think what it means for animacy to have an effect in general in life, in academic achievement, in memory training for older adults, stuff like that. It's a question for you to be a bit more creative.
I guess it's a personal question also, because you gave me like a 0 on that. I guess it was a mistake.
Well, you didn't do anything. I mean, I have to look up your text.
Obviously I did, or I went to that.
Listen, Isaac, the best way, if you have time, of course, this is a big if, is to read. So take Nairn's article. You still have to read it. Read the discussion again. And what you will see is that the discussion is parallel to the introduction, but the discussion has the end that is not related to the introduction. That end is what they say the research means. And if you, not only the Nairn's article, but look at the Stroop effect and the one that we will use for experiment 3, they all are structured the same way, right? There is that tail.
Okay, I guess it's private or something. I guess it was a mistake probably, but all right.
Well, you have to learn. It's the price.
No, I'm saying there was a mistake with the grading.
Oh, my grading.
I would assume, because.
Well, so double check it, and I'm not, one of these people who say, no, I was always right. So if you think that you can make a case that you wrote something that's better, but it's not only in terms of whether you address these issues, but it's also whether your writing makes sense. That I can't put in the rubric. I mean, so we can discuss that, sure.
All right.
Okay, I'll see you guys.
Professor, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Noor.
So some of the inanimate objects were things like purse. Words, sorry. Were purse, lab, or like a chair or something like that. I don't really remember them because I have a really bad memory. So
there's no such thing, Noor, as bad memory. Believe me.
Yeah, I don't remember like any of these like words that I saw. I remember a few. But do we have to list them on the paper?
Well, they are in the Nairn's article. These are exactly the same words. So if you don't remember them, you just open the article. That's all.
Oh, okay.
They're listed. All 24 of them are listed there. And like I said before, the script for your experiment was the exact replication of Nairn et al. Article. The same 24 words and 8 buffer words, which we don't care about.
Oh, okay. And also, when is the extra credit due?
The same. You submit the article either based on the t-test or based on factorial ANOVA. That's all. It's about the statistics.
No, when is it due? Like, what's the date?
The 29th.
Okay.
So you either write your report based on t-test, that's the standard one, or you write your report based on factorial ANOVA. But that's the same paper, due on the same date. It's just the statistics is different. That's all.
You said 8 path forwards. I thought it was 4.
I'm sorry. Say it again, Leroy. I missed the beginning.
You said we had 8 path forwards. I thought it was 4.
Well, look, there are 3 trials, right? You have 2 and 2. Oh, so it's 12, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay, so it's 12 buffer words.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a great day.
You too, Leroy. Stay well. See you guys.